Good morning, everybody. It is the wake up call. We are about to start. I'm going to be going quickly today because honestly, 15 minutes is super fast. I'm realizing how much information I need to say and how much information I can share in a quick little thing. Today I'm going to be sharing a document with you for going over some definitions that are crucial to good governance practices. So I'm going to share the document right now, and you can open it on your own time, or you can open it now and follow along. But I'm going to be going over some essential definitions of things that you should be taking into consideration when you are on a board. And this is good for new board members as much as it is for people who've been on boards for a long time, because as I mentioned earlier this week, sometimes we become complacent and sometimes we don't necessarily follow the tools that we give ourselves as a board, and then we fall into some monotonous rituals that we do as a board, and we're not looking at the things that that we are supposed to be looking at. So I'm going to start right now. I'm going to be talking about articles of incorporations, bylaws. I'm going to be talking about policies. I'm going to be talking about financial statements and risk management. Big things today. We're talking about serious discussions because being on a board is serious. So I'd like to say hi to everybody. The numbers girl, I see you. Michelle, I see you. I see there's 4 people online. If you're there, say hi in the chat. If you can chat. If you can't chat, let's say you can't see the chat, because that's the fun part, honestly, is for me to be able to chat with you. It means that you might not be signed into your YouTube account, and if you don't have one, maybe you should get one, and then we could chat all day. Allô Francine, comment ça va? Oh, by the way, that document, bonjour tout le monde qui est des francophones. J'ai produit le document dans les 2 langues. Donc, you'll have access to the document in both official languages, French and English. So the second page is the French one. The English page is the first one, obviously. If you didn't figure that part out, there's a little tip for you. Okay, so articles of incorporation. Articles of incorporation are the legal documents. They are the foundation of every organization. And you'll see that I talk very passionately about this. Again, I'm a governance geek, so I like to talk passionately about these things. Articles of incorporation are legal documents. You know, when you create a business and you create this nonprofit organizations, you're going to get a legal document. It's usually going to have your name on it. It's going to have the purpose. It's going to also tell you some initial details about your board of directors and certain elements that you have included at the onset of your organization. And these things here, listen, they used to be called letters patent letters, the lettres patentes for those in French. Sorry. And you could be on a board that is like 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and these letters patent are like these faxed or like photocopied documents, but they have the basis on there for the whole organization that is now modernized. And you might want to look at those. You might want to say, as a board, like, are these still pertinent to what we do? And if not, maybe it's time to have a refresh. In 2024 November, we're going to be like the new ONCA regulations. ONCA is the Ontario Nonprofit Corporations Act, is going to be enforcing new requirements, and looking at your letters patent is one of those things, or your articles of incorporation. So look at those and see, as a board, do they need to be updated? How do we look at these? How do we interpret that? Because at the onset, this is how we said we would function. The other document that goes hand in hand with that is your bylaw. So your bylaw is also a document that is created at the onset of the organization and is reviewed, or should be reviewed, every year. So the bylaws are a set of rules and regulations that the organization or corporation establishes to govern. In there, what's going to be in there? And why do you need to see this? So, good morning. Oh, bonjour, Suzanne. Suzanne, il y a un document là si vous voulez aller le télécharger. Donc, you're going to want to look at your bylaws to see if you're functioning as a board. What's in there? You're going to have definitions. You're going to have how to vote. You're going to have how the AGM or your annual general meeting is supposed to be run, positions on the board, a lot of elements that you need to adhere to as a board to do your job properly by law, right? And so as a board member, because I'm a geeky board member, I will often have my binder with all the policies, and I'll have the bylaw, and I'll have the articles of incorporation, just like a good little schoolgirl. And I will check the bylaws and check to see if the policies match. So is that exactly what we said we would be doing at the onset of the organization or when we renewed the bylaw? The bylaw should be reviewed and renewed regularly, just as well as all the other documents. And the changes that are done to the bylaw have to be voted in at the AGM, your annual general meeting, with your board members. Is this too heavy? Is this too much information for you this morning? Because this is a heavy one. But these important things are key when you're joining a board and you want to know what you should be looking at and the official documents that you should have access to. So I want you to be aware that this is super important, and that when you're getting into a new board and they don't show you these things, or it's not current practice, I want you to be like, oh, I want to ask the questions. Do we have a bylaw? And they're going to be like, oh, you talked to Lynn, didn't you? So bylaws, articles of incorporation. The next one is policies. How do you govern? So the policies are rules, essentially. Processes are the ways that you limit the work that is done at the board, or and these documents ensure consistency, compliance, clarity. So it's the how we operate. So the bylaw is those limiting objectives that we have, like the rules set by the nonprofit at the beginning. And then the policies is the how are we going to do this? How are we going to evaluate financial statements? How are we going to vote people into the board? How are we going to ensure that we review risk properly? Strategic planning, how are we going to do that? What are the definitions, and how are we going to name all of the people around the board table? A lot of interesting things can be in policies so that the board knows how to do things. And policies seem boring, okay? And trust me, I've been on a lot of boards, and policies are the bane of our existence when we're on boards. They can be so like, oh, okay, why are we reviewing these things yearly and making sure that we have these? Policies are great when things are not going well. Okay, trust me on this. When things are not going well, if you have problems with your staff or problems internally or conflicts of interest, or you don't know how, and you're new and there's a new board, essentially there's like a 50 to 60% new board turnover, you don't know how to run your board, you turn to these policies, and it's super efficient, it's super effective, and you have a map or a guide to tell you how to do these things. Again, I have my little binder, I have my policies, and I have my bylaw, and I ask the right questions on how we're running the board, how we said we would do it, and are we following that? The next one on this list here that you might have in front of you, if you click the link, is the financial statements. Now, I have the numbers girl on here. Numbers girl, by the way, is my director of operations. So I outed you, Mel, but she's on here, and she is the one who is the specialist in these documents, the financial statements. And bonjour, Mel. So the financial statements are essentially used. It's a series of statements that you can review monthly, quarterly, yearly, And you're going to want to understand these and ask questions about them. All right. It's not always easy. I am first to admit that I am not a numbers girl, but understanding the numbers and where they come from and why you're looking at them and why you're getting this information is super important. And we will have probably Mel come one day and talk to you about that and what's important and what you should be looking for. So, those financial statements, if you're sitting at a board and you're not receiving them, or it seems like that you have a lot of questions about them and it's not clear for you, you're going to want to either request more. You're allowed to, as a board, you're allowed to say, okay, this is either too much information or this is not enough information, and I need to see this and this so that I am informed well enough to make the decisions that I have to make as a board. So that's another topic that I'd love to bring on. How do you know that you have the information that you need to make the proper decisions when you're at the board table? So financial statements are super important, and they will tell you about the financial health. They're going to help you make decisions. They're going to help you analyze whether or not you should take on projects, or whether or not you should allocate resources. All of these things that that as a board member, you should be aware of, and sometimes you're not. If you're going through board meetings and you haven't seen any financial statements, get a hold of me. The other one is risk management. So sometimes you'll see finance and risk together. They evaluate different things as well. So risk, one of the biggest things that you might, Mel says the financial statements doesn't need to be complicated. I agree. I'm learning a lot. I have learned a lot. I've been on financial education sessions for, Ontario hospitals. I've had all of the education, and still sometimes I think, oh my God, is this over my head? And I want to become really proficient at this. The other thing is, okay, so risk management. One of the most important things that I'm going to tell you today is, if you are on a board and you don't know if you have board insurance, board member insurance, if you are not insured, I want you to ask that question at the next board meeting. All right? Do we have insurance? And did you know that you can get your insurance broker or your insurance specialist to come in and talk to you as a board to make sure that you have that insurance? I have had that at board meetings, and it's very educational, but also reassuring to know. And if you've been on a board, or this board has existed for a long time, is that up to date? Are you covered for enough value, like the financially, and for what causes? Has your organization changed? Do you have many more offices now? Do you have different programs? You want to make sure that everything that is done, is up to date. So that risk management, but also you might be accredited. So an accredited organization, Accreditation Canada, or accreditation, other kinds of types of accreditations, you're going to want to make sure that you're following the specified accreditation requirements. Or if your funding is from a specific funding body and they have requirements, you want to make sure as a board, like, are we following the proper things? Like, are we giving them the proper reports? Are we making sure that we're running efficiently and effectively as an organization? Those are questions that, if you're sitting at a board and you don't know the answers to this, and you're listening to this and you don't know the answers to this, you might want to either keep watching over and over again every day, and we're going to be talking about all these elements over and over again throughout these daily wake up calls. But you're going to want to ask the questions at your board meeting. And you know what, you might ask these questions and you might be met with resistance because they might not know either. So in this case, if you both don't know, you win, because then you can go find out. And in the case where you ask the question and they have the answer, you win, because then everybody knows what we're talking about and you're more informed. So ask the questions. And if people around the table don't know the answer to it, then you're all winning because you're all learning at the same time. All right, let me see. There's questions in the chat. Can there be too many policies or for every exception a policy is created? Do too many policies become cumbersome? It's a great question. So I've been on boards where there's, over 50 policies for governance, and I've been on boards where there are no policies. You would want to have policies, first of all, so that, and I always see policies as a super important tool for succession. You sitting around the table might know how to do things. All right. But if your board is as recruiting new board members, they don't. So policies, up-to-date policies and procedures are tools for proper succession of the board. If you have a proper turnover and you have people coming in after their mandates, like after 1 or 2 mandates, and they're well scattered, that means you probably have turnover every year or every other year. That's good, and it's important. Okay, so if you are having good turnover at the board, and I say good turnover because turnover, it doesn't necessarily have to be bad, but you want them to have access to these policies and you want to be reviewing them with everybody. And whether you have a lot of policies or very little policies, you want to make sure that they're effectively representing what you're doing. Can there be too many? It depends what the content is. And exceptions, like you don't want to be caught off guard by something, or exceptions, you might want to see how maybe that exception can fit within a limitation or another type of policy. Can you cover it? It all depends on the structure of the organization too and how you function. Are you a policy-led board? Are you a working board? There are so many factors that come into that. The other thing I wanted to mention when it comes to articles of incorporation, bylaws, and policies, you can assign a governance committee to review this. So you don't have to do all of that work at the board. You can have a committee that looks at that, and picks a handful of policies every quarter or every other month and reviews them and then brings them back to the board and says, "Yep, we're kosher. We reviewed these policies. We think they're great." And then the board can have an opportunity to question. The other documents here, like financial statements or audit, oftentimes you would have like a finance and audit committee, but you can have separate committees for that as well. So you can assign that work, that review, to a committee so that the people, and usually the committees are made up from people on the board, but you can have external people looking at these too if you don't have the skills and the resources on your board, and just to make sure that these things are being reviewed regularly, and then bring them back to the board and say, yes, we did our job. We are on track. Everything's being followed. That doesn't mean, though, that the larger board doesn't need to be aware of what's in those policies. So you could bring back a report from the governance committee and talk about the policies that you reviewed and tell everybody what's on them and how you reviewed them, and if there are changes made, to announce those, and then they would be approved by the board. So you're never approving anything in committees. That's another topic for another decision, another day. But the decisions that are made within the committees have to be brought, and the final decisions and the voting happens at the board level. So don't be afraid. Your bylaws and your policies and your financial statements will not be finally approved at the committee. You will have an opportunity to vote that in. Excellent questions today. Oh my gosh, it's so fun. I am enjoying this process so much. My governance geekism, my governance geek inside is happy, is thrilled, and I hope that you're benefiting from this. I hope that your little governance geek inside is benefiting from this. Now, listen, I don't tell you this without a purpose. LMD Solutions is doing governance training. We do Governance 101. If you're on a board and your board is not aware of these things, and now you're going to go sit there and you're going to ask all these questions, and you wish everybody was kind of up to par with this information, give me a call. Go to my website. I will add my website here. And you can go on the website and contact me. I'm reachable. You can DM me. You can, send me you can call me, whatever. But it's really important that your board have the proper training, education, recruitment, orientation. And if you're not up to par with that, I would really recommend that you do that, because it builds confidence. It makes everything go smoother. It makes everybody feel like they're being effective. And so I'm going to leave you on that note today. Do you have any questions, by the way? Any other questions or comments? I've been talking for 20 minutes. I think 20 minutes is starting to be my comfort zone. Anybody have any questions? I'm going to end it today with that. And if you do have questions, again, you know how to reach me. So I thank you. Thank you very much. Have a great day. It is Wednesday. Have coffee. Follow your own path. That's my cup today. It's actually a Dorothy cup, Wizard of Oz. So, little tidbit. Follow your own path and have a good Wednesday.